If you love movies and movie discussions, you've come to the right place. Who am I, you ask? I am The Wiz! And I'm here today to review the 2013 sci-fi thriller Snowpiercer, starring Chris Evans, Song Kang-Ho, Tilda Swinton, Ed Harris, John Hurt, and Jaime Bell, directed by Bong Joon-Ho. I gotta tell you, if there is a director that I never thought would actually win an Oscar, it would be Bong Joon-Ho. And it's not that I think he is a bad director. Obviously, he's a really good director. The way that the Oscars is, before that, it was never done that a film from a foreign language would win not only Best Director, but Best Picture. But he did that with his movie Parasite, which I believe was in 2018, I believe. Great movie. Definitely a great movie that deserved it, and I was happy that it won. But to be honest, though, Parasite was the first movie from Bong Joon-Ho that I believe that I watched. And after that, I was trying to seek out more of his movies, and I just never got around to it, to be completely honest. But the one movie that a lot of people kept saying is a great movie that I should check out was this movie, Snowpiercer, which I was kind of surprised by because he has much more heady films. He has Memories of Murder. I think he just did Okja about a few years before Parasite. I was a bit surprised it was this movie specifically, but let's see how it turns out, shall we? Let's get into the review of Snowpiercer, directed by Bong Joon-Ho. Now, before we get into that, let's get into the plot. This is set in a future where a experiment to reverse climate change ends disastrously, where the entire world gets snowed over into an ice age. But the only survivors that are there are in a constantly moving train that is moving 365 24/7 across the world, called the Snowpiercer. In the movie, we are on the perspective of the tail end of the train, which is led by a person named Curtis, played by Chris Evans. They are treated so poorly, they're about to revolt and go after the people at the front of the car who are the wealthy, the ones that are subjugating them, led by the character Wilford, played by Ed Harris. And the film basically is Curtis leading his people all the way to the front of the train and what happens as that goes on. And that's kind of the simplest version of the plot. It actually, well, to be kind of fair, that is the plot, not the simple version. That is the complete plot, but we will get into that as I get into the review. Okay, so now that I've gotten to the plot, let's get to my 3 points. And my first point is this film has excellent world building. Man, let me tell you something. For a movie that is just set on a train, they do an amazing job in this movie, making you believe that you're living in this really detailed, rich world. And it is one of the biggest pluses of this movie. You get to learn all this kind of stuff about specific characters, how the world works, and just the weird things that happen on this train. And not why it's happening, but it makes you really think why it's happening, which is a huge plus. This type of world building is comparable to, I would say, maybe Game of Thrones, where the world and the locations are itself its own character and are fascinating enough to carry the story along, when maybe the actual story and characters aren't as in-depth to do that. It is something that I honestly was thinking about purchasing the books that this is based off of. These are based off of graphic novels. I believe they were made in France. I was tempted to say, I kind of want to know more. I'm going to also admit something, too, but when this was made into a TV series, my immediate reaction is just like, oh, why? Like, whenever they do that, they ruin them. With exceptions, of course, the big exception is MASH, but another exception is Fargo, of course, my favorite movie, that turned out to be a pretty good series. I only saw the first season, but the first season was excellent in that series. Watching this movie, I instantly understood why, because like, oh my God, like, yes, I would want to spend more time in this world. I want to know more about this. So yeah, this would make a perfect TV series. Almost to the point where I think it should have been a TV series. This should have been a prestige HBO TV series with a big budget and really good actors in it. I haven't seen the TNT version, so there might be. I don't really know, but that's my feeling of it. But the world that this movie builds, I think, is one of its biggest strengths. My second point. This has a great cast with standouts of Chris Evans and Song Kang-Ho. Let me get to Chris Evans first. Chris Evans has not been playing very deep characters for the past 15 years. He's most known at first for being the Human Torch in the god-awful Fantastic Four movies. If you like the Fantastic Four movies, good for you. I'm happy for you. I thought they were awful. I thought they were terrible. When I heard that he was going to be Captain America, I was like, oh, God, why? Like, he was awful as Johnny Storm. That would be terrible. But to be absolutely honest, he did Captain America incredibly well. He was fantastic as Captain America. But then he kind of played that same character in different shades in other movies too. So it was hard for me to believe that he could pull off a character with a little more nuance and depth. Now, Curtis doesn't have a lot of depth, okay? One of the biggest weaknesses of this movie is that the characters are pretty threadbare. But he does play dark, brooding, and broken pretty damn well. I think he plays this character very well in this movie. But the best performance in this movie is Kang-Ho, who plays this engineer who bribes the survivors of the back to open the gates for them to move on to every car. He plays his character really well. He's mysterious. He's considered to be a little broken, a little bit disturbed. He's portrayed as somebody who is addicted to drugs along with his daughter. But his character is very interesting and entertaining, and I think it's mostly due to his performance as well. Another I want to give it a little shout out to is Tilda Swinton. I think she did a very good performance as well. The only thing that's going to hold any of these performances back is that the characters themselves are not very deep. Only thing that holds the performances back is the material that is given to them. I think Jaime Bell was good, John Hurt was good, Ed Harris was good in a very small role. Like, these are very good performances. It's a great cast. I had no problems with any of them. Octavia Spencer is very good as well. But I think the standouts are Chris Evans and Song Kang-Ho in this. And my third point, this film feels more like a setup and proof of concept than a fully fleshed out story. And here's why I say this. First off, the actual plot is very basic. It's a revolution story. People from one side are subjugated enough to where they get angry and want to start a revolution. They start a revolution. They reach the end. That's it. That's the movie. What I'm surprised by is two things. One, I'm surprised by that they got to the attack so fast. Like, it starts within the first 30 minutes, which I was actually kind of surprised by, because I thought they would spend more time showing how poorly these people live, how much trouble they are in, all the issues that they're having. They do to a certain point in the first 15, 20 minutes, but I thought they were going to get more into it and why this happened and how it happened, and they really do not get into it that much. But what I will also say is that the characters themselves are also pretty threadbare. Like I said, Curtis is basically a leader who is very conflicted. Octavia Spencer's character is motivated by the fact that her son gets kidnapped. Other characters are the exact same way, with maybe the exception of Song Kang-Ho, but I won't get into what's different about his character. Yeah, the rest of the motivations are pretty threadbare until maybe the very end, where something happens and it reveals something about one specific character. But that's about it. If I was to really gauge the plot of this movie, I would say the plot is disappointingly standard. It's fine for what it is. The characters are fine for what it is. The plot does the job it needs to do, but it doesn't excel the way I would like it to. The world building does most work to make this film a very watchable, very good film. But if you are expecting something a lot deeper than what it is, it's really not that deep. I got attached to the possibilities of the story and the world than I got to the characters. And while that is a great thing for the story itself, for it to branch out into a different story, it doesn't really work that well. Another criticism I have with Game of Thrones is that if you really look back, only a couple of characters are that interesting, but it's the world and the locations that are the most interesting thing about the series. And that's exactly how I feel about the film. How did this train car get made? How did the world get to this point? What really started everything? What are the politics behind it? And the film hints towards those things, which is great if you want to make more stories. But when it comes to this specific story, it isn't that interesting. It's fine. It's entertaining. It does the job. But you would want more from this. So I wouldn't say it's bad, but it's fine for what it is. It's just that I think the world that it built deserved a better story to it. Okay, so who do I recommend this to? I recommend this to people if you like films with a fully realized world. I can't say enough how interesting and fascinating the world they created in this movie. The way that the train is, how it's built, how it's sectioned off, how the pockets of civilizations inside the train act and react, how they're made. It tells itself a different story and has other mysteries behind it that I find fascinating and I would want to dive into more. So if you like stuff like Game of Thrones, where the worlds themselves are its own character, I would say definitely check this out. I'd also recommend this for people if you like stories that are puzzle-like. I'm not going to say this film is incredibly complicated, but what I will say is that the film confuses you but fascinates you at times. Why do people dress a certain way? Why do they act a certain way? What drives them? What motivates them? Why does this character act this way? Like, there are certain questions that are answered and don't get answered throughout the entire film that makes it much more fascinating. I think that if you like films that are kind of confusing or that make you think to a certain extent, but you don't mind that the characters and the story is kind of threadbare, I think you might get something out of it. And who do I not recommend this for? I do not recommend this for somebody if you want a deeper narrative. The disappointing thing about this movie is the fact that its world is fascinating and it seems very deep and fleshed out and has very interesting details that you want to know more about. The problem is that the actual narrative is not that deep. It is we're at point A, let's get to point B. And that is it. No other depth to it other than that, except for maybe some ancillary characters here and there that have their own motivations. I find that crushingly disappointing. But then again, I also think this should have been a TV series before a film. So I might actually check out the TNT series just to see how that turns out and how that is. But in regards to the movie, I think that it is pretty disappointing that they spent so much time on the details of the world, but not on the characters in the story themselves. So if you want a deeper narrative, this is not the movie for you. Overall, I will recommend Snowpiercer. I think it is a disappointingly good movie. The reason why I say that is because I think it could have been a great movie. It could have been something that was outstanding, but the characters and the plot are just too threadbare for me to actually really give it a very strong recommendation. I will say that it makes me interested in getting the books or checking out the TV series. It definitely has a world that I am very interested in, but I just wish it was paired with very interesting characters, because I gotta be honest, if there is something that really draws me in more, it's interesting characters more than an interesting world. And because of that, I find it a little disappointing that it spent so much time on the world, but very little on the characters. I would have liked to know more about Curtis, about Wilhelm, or I forgot his name, or Gilliam, and the rest of the characters, and learn more about them, but the film just doesn't give you any of that, and I think they might do that in the books, or they might do it in the TV series, but unfortunately there isn't much else to go on with regards to the film. But I do recommend it. I think it's good. It's just not great. I definitely did enjoy it, though. It was a fun movie, but I would have wanted a lot more. So I do recommend Snowpiercer. Check it out on Netflix if you have not seen it. Now, if you want my full review on this movie, you can go to my website at IamTheWiz.com. You'll have my full written review right on the site, along with a link to the video that has this review that you've just listened to. All right, so moving on from this coming week, Thursday, me and Zero are going to continue the 007 Chronicles by watching and reviewing Goldfinger. Saturday, me and Kim are reviewing Trading Places, directed by John Landis. And Tuesday, we're going to do movies that were nominated for Oscars this year. Now, I'm going to give a caveat with this movie. I am going to assume this is going to get some nominations. If it doesn't, I will change it. Now, it has to get nominations in the big 8 categories, which are Best Picture, Best Director, Actor, Actress, Supporting Actress, and either Original or Adapted Screenplay. I think at the most it will get an Original Screenplay, but the type of word of mouth I've heard about this film, there is a possibility it will get a little bit more than that. I'm going to watch Past Lives, directed by Celine Song. I love romantic films. I really do. And when I hear that there is a fantastic romantic film out there, I definitely want to check it out. I tried to convince Kim to see it, but it's a foreign language film, so she was like, I don't know. So I will watch this on my own. I am going to look forward to it. Tune in next time. On Thursday, me and Zero are going to review Goldfinger for the 007 Chronicles. Saturday, me and Kim are going to review Trading Places. And on Tuesday, I will tentatively review Past Lives, directed by Celine Song. I am The Wiz, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye.